The air inside Zeltron Station's cantina was thick and heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. Smoke from a dozen different worlds mixed together, some sweet like burning flowers, others sharp and bitter. Strange colored lights flickered from the ceiling, casting dancing shadows across tables filled with creatures from across the galaxy. In the farthest corner, where the light barely reached, sat a figure that made even the toughest smugglers look away. Vexmalar had once been a proud warrior of the Catherian Empire. His kind were known throughout the galaxy as fierce fighters, with their natural armor-like skin and 4 eyes that could spot enemies from incredible distances. But the creature sitting alone looked nothing like those legendary warriors. Half of Vexmalar's face was now metal and wires. One of his 4 eyes had been replaced with a glowing red scanner that whirred softly as it moved. His left arm was completely mechanical, made from salvaged ship parts that sparked occasionally. Deep scars ran across his chest where his natural armor had been cracked and never properly healed. This was what 5 years of war against humans had done to him. He lifted his glass with his good hand, his 7th drink of the night. The Rigelian whiskey burned as it went down, but it was nothing compared to the burning memories in his mind. Every night he came to this cantina. Every night he drank until the faces of the dead stopped haunting him. Tonight was no different. Or so he thought. The sound of footsteps approached his table. Most people knew to stay away from him. The bartender had learned to just keep the drinks coming and leave him alone. But these footsteps didn't stop. They came right up to his table. "Commander." "Vexmalar." He looked up to see a young woman, clearly from one of the reporter species, probably Altarian, by her pale blue skin and large eyes. She held a small recording device in her hand, its red light already blinking. Fresh out of journalism school, he guessed. Still believed in truth and justice and all that garbage. "I'm Lyra Vasquez from Galactic Broadcasting Corporation," she said, sliding into the seat across from him without being invited. "I was hoping we could talk about the Human Coalition War." Vexmalar's mandibles, the sharp, claw-like appendages around his mouth, clicked together rapidly. If humans had seen this, they would have recognized it as laughter, but bitter and cold. He had spent enough time fighting humans to pick up some of their expressions. "The war." His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "Kid, you have no idea what you're asking about." Lyra leaned forward, excited. This was exactly the kind of interview that would make her career. A real war hero, someone who had actually fought against the legendary human military. The public deserves to know what really happened out there. The official reports say the war ended in a peaceful treaty, but there are rumors. "The official reports are sanitized garbage," Vexmalar cut her off, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that made her recorder struggle to pick it up. "Written by politicians who never saw a battlefield, never watched their friends die, never looked into a human's eyes as they—" He stopped himself, taking another long drink. The whiskey was starting to make his head fuzzy, which was exactly what he wanted. When his head was clear, the memories were too sharp, too real. "You want to know about humans in combat?" He stared at her with his 3 remaining natural eyes, while his mechanical one focused and refocused with tiny clicking sounds. "About what it's really like to face them across a battlefield? About why half the coalition military retired early or ended up in mental health facilities?" Lyra nodded eagerly, her recording device now held closer to catch every word. Vexmalar looked around the cantina. At the other tables sat various aliens, Zephyrians with their tentacle faces, Corvan traders with their thick purple skin, even a few Nexari whose crystal bodies chimed softly when they moved. All of them were carefully not looking in his direction. They knew who he was, what he had seen. Veterans of the human war were treated with a mixture of respect and fear throughout the galaxy. He drained his glass completely and set it down with a heavy thunk. The alcohol was making his inhibitions weaker, making the words want to come out. Maybe it was time. Maybe someone should know the truth about what humans were really capable of. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll tell you about the war. I'll tell you about humans and what they do when you threaten their families, their homes, their way of life. But don't say I didn't warn you, kid." Lyra's eyes lit up with excitement, but Vexmalar wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring past her, into memories that still woke him up screaming some nights. When I'm done talking, you're going to wish you had never asked. You're going to understand why most of us who fought them never speak about it. And you're going to realize that the peace treaty wasn't the coalition being generous. It was us, admitting that we had picked a fight with something we couldn't defeat. He raised his hand to signal the bartender for another drink. This was going to be a long night. Vexmalar's mechanical eye dimmed as his mind drifted back to that terrible tea. The cantina around him seemed to fade away, replaced by the cold metal corridors of the most powerful military station ever built. His good hand trembled slightly as he began to speak. Third year of the war, and we thought we had the humans figured out. They were tough, sure, but they were also desperate. Running out of ships, running out of weapons, running out of hope. Titan Station was our crown jewel, a massive fortress floating in Saturn's orbit, so big you could see it from the planet's surface with naked eyes. He gestured with his mechanical arm, and the servos whirred softly. Picture this. A station the size of a small moon, bristling with enough firepower to level entire worlds. 50,000 warriors from every corner of coalition space. Zephyrian shock troops with their lightning weapons, Corvan heavy infantry. In their powered armor, Nexari crystal warriors who could redirect energy beams with their bodies. The best of the best, all gathered in one place. Lyra leaned forward, her recorder capturing every word. What made it so special? The shields, for one thing. Triple-layered energy barriers that could stop anything short of a supernova. Plasma. Cannons the size of skyscrapers that could crack moons in half. I've seen them do it during target practice, and the location, Saturn's gravity, well made it impossible to approach without being detected days in advance. It was perfect. Vexmalar's mandibles clicked as he remembered. Then the humans showed up. 12 ships, maybe 15 at most. Half of them looked like they were held together with scrap metal and hope. Mismatched hull plating, engines that sparked and sputtered, weapons that looked like they'd been salvaged. From a junkyard. We couldn't stop laughing. I was on the command deck when they made contact. General Trixoth, biggest, meanest Corvan you've ever seen, purple skin thick as armor plating, tusks that could pierce starship hull. He was in charge of the station. When the human transmission came through, showing this small human woman in a battered uniform, Trixoth actually started choking on his own spit. Captain Hannel, she called herself, couldn't have been more than 5.5 feet tall, probably weighed less than one of Trixoth's arms. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in weeks. Her ship was clearly falling apart behind her, and she had the nerve to demand our surrender. Vexmalar paused to take another drink. The alcohol was making the memories flow more freely, but also making them hurt more. Trixoth laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his command chair. "Surrender," he wheezed. "Little human, you're outnumbered 4,000 to 1. Your ship's are scrap metal. What could you possibly do to us?" Haniul just smiled, calm as anything, like she was discussing the weather. "Give us 12 hours to show you," she said. "If we can't convince you by then, we'll leave." Trixoth was so amused he actually agreed. 12 hours of entertainment, he called it. Lyra's eyes were wide. They were planning something. Oh, they were planning something all right, but not what we expected. See, we'd been holding human prisoners for months. Scientists, engineers, maintenance workers, even some civilians we'd captured during raids on their outer colonies. About 300 of them, kept in the lower detention levels. Vexmalar's voice grew quieter, more haunted. We thought they were broken. They seemed so defeated. They followed orders, didn't cause trouble, barely spoke to each other. Our guards got lazy around them, started treating them like furniture. But humans, they're not like us. When we're defeated, we submit. When Kytherian warriors are beaten, we accept it with honor. Same with most coalition species, but humans, they just pretend to be beaten while they plan their next move. He scratched at one of his scars with a mechanical finger. While Captain Hannel kept us entertained with her negotiations, 12 hours of back and forth about terms and conditions and prisoner exchanges, those 300 humans were preparing for war. They'd been watching us for months. Every guard rotation, every security protocol, every system weakness. Those broken engineers had been memorizing our computer networks, mapping our power grids, studying our weapon systems, all while pretending to be defeated prisoners. The attack came at hour 11. Just when Trixoth was getting ready to blow the human ships out of space for wasting his time, suddenly, alarms started going off all over the station, but not attack alarms, system failure alarms. Vexmalar's mechanical eye focused and refocused rapidly, a nervous tic he'd developed since the war. The humans inside had struck simultaneously. 300 people, all acting at exactly the same moment across a station the size of a city. They'd somehow coordinated without our sensors detecting any communications. They didn't just escape. From their cells, they took control of entire sections. The human engineers went straight for the main computer cores. The scientists hit our research labs and turned our own experimental weapons against us. Even the civilians knew exactly what to do. They went for life support and artificial gravity controls. But the worst part, the thing that still wakes me up at night, was watching our own weapons turn on us. Those plasma cannons that could crack moons, suddenly they were firing on our reinforcement fleets. Our shield generators became weapons, creating energy barriers that trapped our own ships. Our communication arrays started broadcasting false orders that sent our forces into deadly ambushes. Lyra's voice was barely a whisper. How did they know so much about your systems? That's what we couldn't understand at first. Our technology was completely different from theirs. But humans, they learn everything. Every guard who walked past their cells, they were studying his equipment. Every maintenance worker who came to fix something, they were memorizing the procedure. Every computer terminal they glimpsed, they were noting the interface design. In 6 hours, Titan Station fell. Not to the 12 human ships outside. They barely fired a shot. We were destroyed from within by 300 prisoners who had spent months pretending to be helpless while actually planning the most sophisticated military operation in galactic history. 12 of our best warships, destroyed by our own weapons. 50,000 elite warriors defeated by maintenance workers and scientists. The most powerful military installation ever built, captured by people we thought were beaten. Vexmalar's claws scraped against the metal table, leaving deep gouges. The humans didn't just win that day. They taught us something terrifying about their species. They showed us that humans never really surrender. They just wait for the right moment to show you how wrong you were to underestimate them. Lyra shifted uncomfortably in her seat as she watched Vexmalar's expression darken. The veteran's 3 remaining natural eyes seemed to lose their focus, staring at something far beyond the cantina walls. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made the air itself feel heavier. You want to know about civilian targets? His mechanical fingers drummed against the table, each tap echoing like a countdown timer. The coalition brass, they always talked about acceptable losses and strategic necessities, clean words for dirty work. He reached into his jacket with his good hand and pulled out a small, worn photograph. The image showed a beautiful blue-green world dotted with white clouds, peaceful cities visible even from orbit. New Sarajevo, human colony world on the edge of Centauri sector. 500,000 people living quiet lives, farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, children playing in parks. The coalition said it was a military necessity, Lyra began, repeating the official line she'd memorized. It was genocide. The words came out like a physical blow. Vexmalar's cybernetic arm whirred and sparked as his mechanical fist clenched tight enough to crack the table. 400,000 humans, men, women, children who had never held a weapon, never threatened anyone. We glassed the entire world, from orbit in 18 minutes. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I was there, on the flagship Kronos Blade, watching through the viewports as our plasma bombardment turned cities into molten glass. The lucky ones died instantly when the atmosphere caught fire. The others, he couldn't finish the sentence. General Trixoth called it efficient, clean. No coalition casualties, mission accomplished, move on to the next target. We told ourselves it would break human morale, force them to surrender to save their other colonies. Lyra's recorder was still running, but her hands were shaking. What was the human response? That's what scared us most. Nothing, absolutely nothing. Vexmalar took another drink, his hand trembling slightly. We expected immediate retaliation, desperate attacks on our worlds, suicide raids, something. The humans had shown us they were capable of incredible violence when pushed, but after New Sarajevo, silence. Months passed. Our intelligence networks reported that human military forces were pulling back, consolidating around their core worlds. Their fleet stopped launching offensive operations. We thought we'd finally broken them, that the lesson of New Sarajevo had taught them the cost of defying the coalition. He laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. We were idiots. We understood nothing about humans. 18 months after New Sarajevo, I was on extended shore leave. The war was supposedly winding down. Humans were retreating, peace negotiations were starting. I was on my home world of Kitharina, in the house where I'd grown up, trying to forget what I'd seen, what I'd done. Vexmalar's mechanical eye began clicking rapidly, a nervous tick. I woke up in the middle of the night. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't place what. The house was too quiet, too still. I got up to check on my family, my mate Zixithara, my 2 offspring, my elderly sire who lived with us. I walked into the main living area, and there she was, sitting in my favorite chair like she belonged there. Human woman, small and plain-looking. Couldn't have weighed more than 60 kilos, wearing simple, dark clothes. She looked up at me and smiled. "Hello, Commander Vexmalar," she said in perfect Kytherian. "My name is Minji. We need to talk." Lyra leaned forward. "Weren't you terrified, a human assassin in your home?" That's what I thought at first. I reached for my sidearm, but she just shook her head. "I'm not here to kill you," she said. "I'm here to educate you. Your weapon won't work anyway. I disabled it hours ago when I disabled your security system." She had been in my house for hours, watching my family sleep, studying our lives, learning our routines. She knew that my mate liked to read before bed, that my youngest offspring had nightmares about monsters, that my sire took medication for his joint pain every morning at exactly 7. Vexmalar's voice began to shake. She told me she had been watching us for weeks. Not just me, my entire family. She knew their schedules, their favorite foods, their fears, their dreams. She knew things about them that I had forgotten. Then she looked at her wrist device and said, "In exactly 1 hour, your family is going to experience what the families of New Sarajevo experienced. Not death. That would be too easy. They're going to experience loss, displacement, the terror of not knowing if they'll ever see home again." I tried to stop her, tried to fight, but somehow my legs wouldn't work. Later I found out she had drugged the air filtration system with some kind of paralytic compound. I could think, could speak, but couldn't move. At exactly the hour she specified, vehicles arrived, not military transports, civilian emergency services. My family was told there had been a chemical leak that they needed to evacuate immediately. They could bring nothing, told it was too dangerous to gather belongings. They were taken to what Minji called a refugee simulation facility, a place designed to recreate exactly what the New Sarajevo survivors experienced: cold, overcrowded shelters, insufficient food, uncertainty about when or if they could return home, fear that they might never see their loved ones again. For exactly 168 hours, the same amount of time the New Sarajevo survivors spent in emergency shelters before the rescue ships arrived. My family lived through hunger, cold, sleepless nights on hard floors, the constant anxiety of not knowing what would happen next. And Minji sat with me the entire time. She had recording devices showing me everything my family was going through. Every tear, every frightened question from my offspring, every time my mate held them close and tried to be brave while falling apart inside. "This is what you did to 400,000 families," she told me. "Except their emergency shelters were coffins and no rescue was coming." Lyra's face had gone pale. "That's psychological torture. It was justice." Vexmalar's voice carried the weight of years of guilt and understanding, and it was happening simultaneously on every coalition homeworld. Hundreds of human operatives, maybe thousands, all carrying out the same mission at the same time. They called it proportional empathy education. Every coalition officer who had been at New Sarajevo, every politician who had approved it, every citizen who had celebrated it as a victory, they all received visits. Their families experienced displacement, loss, fear, not death but understanding. The humans didn't want revenge. They wanted us to know what we had done, to feel it, not just think about it intellectually, to understand that every number in Our casualty reports had been a person with a family, with dreams, with people who loved them. His mechanical hand opened and closed repeatedly. When it was over, when my family was returned safely home, Minji sat with me one last time. "Now you know," she said. "Now you understand what New Sarajevo really was. The question is, what are you going to do with that knowledge?" She left me a datapad with the names and pictures of every person who died on New Sarajevo. 400,000 faces, 400,000 stories. She said I could spend the rest of my life trying to honor their memory, or I could continue pretending they were just numbers in a report. Vexmalar looked directly at Lyra. That's when I understood what humans really are. Not monsters, not saints. They're a species that remembers every wrong, every kindness, every life lost, and they never ever let the universe forget either. Vexmalar's mechanical eye dimmed as he stared into the distance, lost in memories that still haunted his dreams. The cantina seemed to grow quieter around them, as if the very air was holding its breath for what came next. "The final assault on Earth," he said slowly, each word heavy with regret. "Command called it Operation Cleansing Dawn. We had been fighting humans for 4 years and they were finally beaten. Their fleet was scattered, their colonies captured or destroyed, their military leadership either dead or in hiding," he gestured, with his cybernetic arm, the servos whirring softly. "Picture the largest invasion force in galactic history. 2,000 coalition warships blocking out the sun, orbital bombardment platforms that could level continents, drop ships carrying 500,000 soldiers from a dozen different species. We had weapons that could crack planets, shields that could stop supernovas. And Earth?" Lyra asked, her voice barely audible. "Earth was defenseless. Their orbital defenses were gone, their military satellites destroyed months earlier. Their remaining ships were hiding in asteroid fields or limping toward distant refugees. We had complete control of space around their homeworld." Vexmalar took another drink, his hand shaking slightly. "Admiral June. He was their last military leader still on Earth. Old human, probably past retirement age, but he stayed when everyone else evacuated. He sent us one final transmission before we began the bombardment. The transmission came through on all frequencies. June appeared on our screens looking tired, wearing a simple uniform that had seen better days. Behind him, we could see the skyline of Seoul, their capital city. Buildings were damaged from earlier bombardments, but people were still moving around, still living their lives. "Coalition forces," he said, his voice calm and steady. "You have come to take our world. You believe we are defeated. You are wrong. You want our planet. Come and take it." Vexmalar's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter, but there was no humor in it. General Trixoth actually laughed out loud. "Crazy old human," he said. "Doesn't he know when he's beaten?" We thought it was just bravado, one last defiant gesture before surrender. We started with surgical strikes on military targets, clean, precise orbital bombardment designed to minimize civilian casualties. We still thought we were the good guys back then, fighting to bring order to a chaotic species. But something was wrong. Every target we hit, every building we destroyed seemed to make the humans more determined instead of less. Our intelligence reports showed that instead of surrendering, they were mobilizing. Every human on the planet was preparing for war. The orbital bombardment lasted 3 days. When it was over, we had destroyed every major military installation, every government building, every communications hub. Earth should have been ready to surrender. Instead, Admiral June sent us another message. "Day 1 of the invasion begins." "Now," he said, still calm, still steady. "Welcome to Earth. Try to leave alive." We began the ground assault at dawn. Massive dropships carrying thousands of troops, landing in coordinated strikes across every continent. The plan was simple: overwhelming force, rapid occupation, minimal resistance from a broken population. Vexmalar's voice grew quieter, more haunted. "I was with the first wave landing in Seoul. We expected scattered resistance from military remnants, maybe some desperate civilians. What we found was something else entirely. Every city had become a fortress, not just military fortifications. Every building, every street, every subway tunnel had been turned into a weapon. Skyscrapers became sniper nests. Shopping centers became ammunition factories. Schools became command centers. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that every human, every single one, had chosen to fight rather than surrender. Not just the soldiers, kid, everyone. I remember the first building we tried to clear, apartment complex, looked empty from the outside. We went in expecting to find hiding civilians, maybe some scared families. Instead, we found an entire community that had spent months preparing for this moment. Children who should have been playing with toys were assembling explosive devices with the skill of trained engineers. Elderly humans who could barely walk had set up ambush points with improvised weapons. Parents were teaching their kids how to use captured coalition weapons. The fighting was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. These weren't soldiers following orders. They were people defending their homes with everything they had. Every room was a battlefield, every door a potential trap. We cleared that building floor by floor, room by room. It took us 6 hours and cost us half our platoon. When we finally reached the top floor, we found a little girl, maybe 10 years old, waiting. For us? Vexmala's voice broke slightly. She had rigged the entire floor with explosives salvaged from our own weapons. Professional job, too. Whoever taught her knew what they were doing. She looked at us with these big brown eyes. No fear, just absolute determination. "This is our home," she said in perfect coalition standard. Not screaming, not crying, just stating a fact. "You can't have it." Then she triggered the explosives. Half my squad died in that blast. The other half spent weeks in medical treatment. And that little girl, she became a symbol. Videos of her final words spread throughout the coalition forces. "This is our home. We won that battle, took that building, secured that block, but the victory felt hollow. We weren't conquering Earth, we were destroying it, one room at a time. And every victory cost us something we couldn't get back." The campaign lasted 8 months. We took every major city, secured every strategic location, controlled every important resource. By all military standards, we had won. Earth was occupied, human resistance was crushed, the war was over. But it wasn't over. Every day brought new attacks, new resistance cells, new ways humans found to fight back. They used captured coalition, weapons, improvised explosives, even their own bodies as weapons. They never stopped, never gave up, never accepted defeat. And slowly, we began to realize what we had become. We were no longer liberation forces bringing order to chaos. We were occupiers, fighting a war against an entire species that refused to surrender. To truly defeat them, to make them stop fighting, we would have had to kill every human on Earth, every man, woman, and child. Vexmala's cybernetic arm sparked as his fist clenched. That's when I understood the choice we faced. We could become the monsters we had accused humans of being, commit genocide on a scale that would haunt the galaxy forever, or we could admit that we had been wrong, that this war should never have been fought. The little girl's words kept echoing in my mind. This is our home. Not with hatred, not with anger, but with the absolute certainty that what she was doing was right. She died defending her world, and in doing so, she saved both our species from becoming something unforgivable. We won every battle, but we lost the war. Because to truly defeat humans, we would have had to become worse than anything they had ever been, and that was a price none of us were willing to pay. Vexmalar sat in complete silence, his 3 natural eyes staring into the bottom of his empty glass, while his mechanical eye continued its constant whirring and clicking. The cantina around them had grown strangely quiet, as if every alien patron had unconsciously leaned in to listen to his story. Even the usual sounds of the space station, the hum of life support systems, the distant rumble of docking ships, seemed muted. The weight of his memories hung in the air like a physical thing. Lyra could see other patrons at nearby tables, a group of Zephyrian traders, some off-duty Nexari security guards, even a few Corvan merchants, all stealing glances at their table. They knew who Vexmalar was, what he represented. Veterans of the human war were legends throughout the galaxy, but they were also reminders of the darkest chapter in Coalition history. "The war ended," Vexmalar finally said, his voice so quiet that Lyra had to lean forward to catch his words. But not the way anyone expected, not with human surrender, not with their military defeat, not even with their homeworld conquered. It ended with a peace treaty that changed everything. He signaled the bartender for another drink, but his movements were slow, deliberate, like an old man carrying invisible weights. General Trixoth called it the greatest victory in coalition history. "We have tamed the human beast," he announced to the galaxy. "They are now full partners in our great civilization." But you didn't see it that way. I saw it for what it really was. Surrender. Our surrender. Vexmala's mechanical arm sparked slightly as he gestured. We had won every battle, occupied their homeworld, crushed their military, but we had lost something far more important. We had lost ourselves. The choice was simple: become genocidal monsters or admit we were wrong. The treaty made humans equal partners in the Galactic Coalition. Full membership, full rights, full access to our technology and trade networks. In return, they agreed to stop fighting and help rebuild what the war had destroyed. Lyra's recorder was still running, capturing every word. "What happened to you?" "After the war ended, I retired. Honorable discharge, full pension, medals for distinguished service. All the things a good soldier is supposed to get." His laugh was bitter. "But I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't look at my own reflection without seeing that little girl's face, hearing her last words. 'This is our home.' For 3 years, I drank myself stupid in cantinas like this one. Tried to forget, tried to pretend the war had been necessary, tried to convince myself we had been the good guys. It didn't work. The memories kept coming back, stronger each time. Then I had an accident. Transport ship malfunction in the Vega system. Should have died, half the passengers did. My cybernetic systems were damaged beyond repair, my organic parts were failing, my brain was bleeding. I was dying, and I was almost glad." Vexmala's voice grew softer, more wondering. "But the rescue ship that found us wasn't coalition. It was human. Medical frigate called the Mercy's Hand, part of the new joint rescue operations. They could have left me to die. Nobody would have questioned it. Instead, they brought me to the one place in the galaxy with the medical technology to save my life. Earth. Earth. The world I had helped destroy. The planet I had fought to conquer. And there I was, lying in a hospital bed in Seoul. The same city where I had watched children die, where I had helped turn homes into battlefields. The doctor who saved my life was named Kyung. Young human, maybe 30 years old, brilliant surgeon specializing in cybernetic integration. He worked on me for 18 hours straight, rebuilding my damaged systems, repairing organs that had been failing for years. Vexmala's mechanical eye focused on Lyra with unusual intensity. When I woke up, when I realized where I was terrified. Not of dying, I was terrified of what this human would do when he learned who I was. So I told him. I told him I had been part of the Seoul offensive, that I had helped destroy his city, that I had fought against his people. What did he say? He smiled, actually smiled. Then he said, "My grandfather died in the Seoul offensive. My parents were refugees from New Sarajevo. I know exactly who you are, Commander Vexmalar. I've known since you were brought in." I thought he was going to let me die then, maybe poison my medications or sabotage my cybernetics. Instead, he sat down next to my bed and said, "The war is over. Now we heal. Not just your body, we heal the wounds between our species." He spent the next 2 years treating me, not just my physical injuries, but helping me understand what had really happened during the war. He showed me human history, their literature, their art. He helped me see that the humans we had fought weren't monsters. They were people defending their homes, their families, their way of life. And all the while, he never once showed hatred or anger. Even when I told him about the worst things I had done, the civilians I had killed, the destruction I had caused. He listened, he understood, and he helped me heal. My own family didn't abandon me either. My mate, Zix Thara, she came to Earth to visit me. She met Kyung, learned about human culture, even started corresponding with human scientists about ecological restoration projects. My eldest offspring, Kixara, she enrolled at Seoul University. She's studying human engineering techniques that make our own technology look primitive. She calls me every week, excited about some new discovery, some new way humans have found to solve problems we thought were impossible. My youngest, Zixmorth, he's only 12, but he's already learning human languages, human history. He wants to be a diplomat, to help build bridges between species. He doesn't see humans as enemies. To him, they're just neighbors. Vexmalar stood slowly, his cybernetic joints whirring and clicking. The sound was different now, smoother, more refined. Human engineering, Lyra realized. You want to know the most haunting truth about humans? They weren't the monsters in that war. They were exactly what any species becomes when someone threatens everything they love. The real horror wasn't human brutality. It was recognizing that the capacity for both incredible violence and incredible compassion exists in all of us. Every species, every individual has the potential for both. The humans didn't defeat us through superior weapons or tactics. They defeated us by forcing us to see ourselves clearly, to confront what we had become. They showed us that the line between civilization and savagery isn't drawn by species or technology or military might. It's drawn by the choices we make. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device, a communication pad of human design. Kyung sent me this last week. His daughter just took her first steps. He wanted me to see, to share in his joy, the man whose grandfather I killed, whose parents I made refugees, whose city I helped destroy. He considers me family now. That's what humans do. They remember everything, every kindness, every cruelty, every moment of connection, but they also forgive, they also build, they also hope. They taught the galaxy that being strong doesn't mean being cruel, that being victorious doesn't mean being vindictive. Vexmalar placed payment for his drinks on the table. Human currency, Lyra noticed. Publish your story, kid. Tell the galaxy what really happened during the war. But remember this, humans didn't teach us to fear them. They taught us what it truly means to be alive, to fight for what matters, to show mercy when you have the power to destroy, to forgive even when forgiveness seems impossible, to choose compassion over cruelty, understanding over hatred, hope over despair. That's the real victory of the human war. Not that they defeated the coalition, but that they saved us from becoming something unforgivable. They showed us that even in the darkest moments, even when everything seems lost, there's always a choice to be better. As Vexmalar walked toward the cantina's exit, other patrons, aliens from dozens of different species, nodded respectfully. They understood what he represented now. Not a defeated warrior, but a transformed one. A living example of what the war had really been about. Lyra sat alone with her recordings, finally understanding why so few veterans ever spoke about their experiences. The truth wasn't just haunting, it was transformative. It changed how you saw the universe, how you understood your place in it, and in that smoky cantina on a distant station, the echo of Vexmalar's final words lingered in the air like a benediction. To truly defeat humans, you have to become something worse than they ever were. And that's a price no civilized species should be willing to pay. The cantina slowly returned to its normal noise levels, but something had changed. Every being in that room had heard the story, had been touched by it. They would carry it with them, share it with others, spread the understanding that the human war had taught the galaxy. Some truths, Lyra realized, were too important to remain hidden. This was one of them. The end.